My name is Simon and I've been a professional photographer for over 10 years, and I tested the camera of the new iPhone 17 Pro against my real camera. So the first thing I did was a quick at-home portrait session with my lovely girlfriend. The goal here was to capture a beautiful natural light portrait with a blurry background. And here's the result. So which is which? Take your time and then make a guess. Okay. So the iPhone is on the left, whereas my mirrorless camera Fujifilm XH2 paired with a 56mm 1.2 lens is on the right. And did you guess them correctly? I honestly think that it is not too hard to spot when you know what you're looking for. The iPhone shot was obviously done using portrait mode, and the phone essentially cuts out the subject and then creates an artificial blur in the background, and it does that kind of okay, but not perfect, as you see at her hair or down at the arm. The Fuji on the other hand is all natural bokeh and does look more pleasing in my eyes. That said, the iPhone shot looks great nevertheless, and especially when you look at the image on a phone, which 90% of images end up on, and then I think it's absolutely enough in terms of quality. Now, in regards to editing, there's almost zero in both shots. Essentially, I just tried to match the look of the iPhone photo with my Fuji, and that's because portrait mode on the iPhone is not possible in RAW, so my color matching capabilities were a bit limited. And if you're curious how the iPhone shot would have looked like without portrait mode, here you go. With the bigger sensor in the new telephoto lens of the Pro iPhones, you do in fact get a tiny bit of natural depth separation, but obviously nowhere near to a proper camera with a much bigger sensor. We also did a session in the blue hour where, again, I think given the fact that this was quite dark already and both cameras were 1600 ISO, the iPhone held up quite well, and when looked at a small phone screen and, being compressed by Instagram and of course also YouTube right now, well, it is a nice image. Alright, now let's look at more of a landscape type of photography. I took photos of the village we look at from our patio, and I did it once during daylight and once during blue hour. Each time with both the wide-angle lens on the iPhone versus my camera's wide-angle lens, and then the 4x telephoto lens on the iPhone versus the camera with a telephoto lens. This time both the camera and the iPhone were shot in RAW and matched in Lightroom to look as close to each other as possible, but no excessive sharpening or anything like that was done. Let's start with the daylight shot. So again, can you spot the difference? I have to say, looking at a wide-angle shot like this, I myself have a really hard time to notice anything significant. Only when we zoom in you see the lack of detail on the iPhone shot. But man, I mean, for normal wide-angle landscape architecture stuff that, gets to live on the internet and is not printed or anything, the iPhone is up there. It really is. And also when looking at the telephoto shot, it's really tough to differentiate the two, albeit the iPhone's lack of detail becomes a bit more noticeable here, like when looking at the roof of the church, for example, or of course once you zoom in a little bit more. For the night shots, I obviously had both cameras on a tripod to have longer exposures and keep the ISO as low as possible. Let's again start with the wide-angle shot, and here, here's pretty noticeable in my opinion. The iPhone just looks mushy and not really detailed, at least on my computer, and I hope you can still see these differences after YouTube compression kicks in. And here's the telephoto shot, which is pretty much the same story, but I shouldn't be too harsh because these iPhone photos are great given all the limitations a phone camera has compared to a big mirrorless camera, and I can totally see it replace a real camera in certain fields of photography. A few years ago, for example, I was doing a lot of landscape photography while mountaineering and backcountry hiking, and together with some friends we even published a small coffee table book with the best photographs. But what I wanted to say is that when weight matters a lot, like when mountaineering for example, and you want to capture images of your adventures for social media, a modern iPhone probably reaches the quality threshold to be nearly indistinguishable from a professional camera, at least when looked at on a small screen. So before we talk about video, if you're interested in buying the new iPhone and want to support the channel at the same time, in the description below are some affiliate links to the new iPhone 17 Pro, as well as the Fuji XH2 used in this video. So if you wanted to buy something anyways, it would help me a lot if you do it through those links, as by doing so I may earn a small commission. Alright, now to video, and as you see we have future Simon here because on the first try I was stupid enough to not press record on the iPhone. Anyway, what I wanted to test here was exactly that. Compare it against my Fuji camera again in a YouTube talking head situation like this one. So now you're looking at the Fuji XH2 paired with a Viltrox 23mm 1.4 lens, shot at 1.4, ISO 640, f-log, 4K 10-bit H.265 codec. And now you look at the iPhone 17 Pro, again shot in 4K with the main wide-angle lens at an aperture of f1.8 I think, ISO 800, using Apple log, as well as shooting in ProRes just to give the best possible quality here. In normal use, I'd still probably use H.265 on the iPhone as well, because with the Blackmagic camera app, it's possible to shoot H.265 and log at the same time, and this gives more manageable file sizes compared to ProRes. And then I purposefully did not use ProRes RAW, as for a controlled indoor setting like this one, it really is overkill. And my Fuji of course is also not able to shoot RAW anyways, so there's no point in comparing the two. Okay, but let's look at the image coming out of the iPhone, and yeah, you see differences, probably more so than in the photography. First and foremost, there's this big difference in depth of field in how blurry my background is. And here, of course, the iPhone with its smaller sensor cannot beat physics. But other than that, I do think that the image is really pleasing and colors look nice. And I mean, yeah, you see some differences in highlight roll-off, for example, if you know what you're looking for. But on the other hand, I'm also not a professional colorist by any stretch of the imagination. So I guess there's still a good bit of quality headroom, and you could certainly match the image of the iPhone even closer to the Fuji if you really tried. But all in all, what do you think? Do you think the difference in quality is noticeable enough, big enough that you might click away from a video when you see it in the quality of the iPhone versus a real camera? I honestly don't think so. I think that audio quality and lighting is way more important than this lack of blurry background behind me. Anyways, now back to the original video. For those who watch my videos regularly, you know that I talk a lot about how you should buy used phones and what the best buying and selling strategies are. And therefore it might be a bit weird that I bought a new iPhone 17 Pro right after launch, but the thing is, I also always say that a new phone, especially a Pro iPhone, does only make sense when you have a concrete application for which you need it. And in my case, that is YouTube. I plan on using it as a second camera for filming, and B, I'm also planning a series of phone camera reviews from all kinds of different brands and segments. And here I thought that having a well-known, top-of-the-line phone like an iPhone 17 Pro might be the ideal benchmark to compare everything else against. So yeah, that's that. And then I also intend to make more specific videos about how the iPhone 17 Pro does in architectural photography, for example, in video production, music, and so on. So if you are interested in all that, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and yeah, see you in the next video.